Good morning, this is Crystal Woods with Seasons in the Vine, and I have a Christmas Fresh Friday for you today. So who are the wise men? Who are these magi? Well, I want to fill you in on it because when I was writing the Jesus Bible study this year, covering the Gospel of Matthew, I got to do a little bit of a deep dive into the magi and who they really are. And a lot of times we set up these wise men right in our nativity. And the thing is they weren't there. They weren't there then. And maybe some of you know that, and maybe some of you don't. But it was considerably later, much further along, probably by about at least 2 years, that the Magi actually made it all the way to see Jesus. And the other thing is, there's nowhere in Scripture that actually identifies that there are 3 Magi or wise men. It could have been more. Now, a lot of times church tradition has kept with 3 because there were 3 gifts. But the reality is Scripture never identifies exactly how many wise men traveled to Jesus. But that's not what I want to share with you in totality. I just wanted to kind of give you that setup. Let's look at Matthew 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. And assembling all of the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them as to where the Christ was to be born. Herod is intimidated. He's a little bit threatened. And Herod is a bloodthirsty tyrant. And so he's concerned. The rest of the people are concerned, all of Jerusalem, because they don't know how far he's going to go to get peace again, for him to have peace of mind. And so that's why they're upset. That's the only reason, is because Herod's upset. Verse 5, they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who shall shepherd all of my people." Now, God would use little old Bethlehem for his great purposes. And that we see in Micah 5:2-4. That was the prophetic word there that's been accomplished. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him." Now we know Herod's not really saying this because he truly wants to worship the newborn king. He actually wants to eliminate the threat of this newborn king. After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. Now, this is kind of wild. This star is a supernatural phenomenon. It has to be supernatural. It's moving along with them and highlighting where Jesus is. Let's look at that again. After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them and came to rest over the place where the child was. Well, this star has been actively guiding them for a long time now, because it's been about 2 years since Jesus has been born. They're not even headed to a stable because there was no room at the inn. They're actually headed to a house. That's how we know time has passed. And considerable time, because as we fast forward the story, Herod kills the children, the male children, 2 years and under. So we know he's got a guess here of how old Jesus might be. And so we know some time has gone on. But this star is a supernatural phenomenon. And one of the things in my scholarly studies was that this star could be something like the cloud by day and the fire by night that guided the Israelites in the wilderness wandering for those 40 years. This tangible, supernatural presence of God guiding. So it's similar to that. Pretty cool. If you ever thought it was just a physiological or a physical thing, it's actually has to be supernatural. It's popping up. It's showing them where they need to go exactly when they need it. Verse 10, when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with joy. It's like, oh, here we go. And going into the house, not the stable, they saw the child with Mary and his mother. They fell down and worshiped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. Okay, so that's the scripture that we have to work with. Now let's look at some historical context. This is really important when we do Bible study. It helps us understand. The exact time of the Magi's visit cannot be determined. Oh, by the way, I'm just looking at my own Bible study that I write. So cool. Determined, but there are some clues from here in the text. Some time has passed. We already reviewed that. And now the family is residing in a house. That's what Matthew 2:11 tells us. Jesus is no longer an infant, but rather called a child. That's Matthew 2:8-11. The Magi are wise men or specialists in astronomy. Now, astronomy is the study of space and planets and, the things that are up there, right, in the universe. And so what we need to understand is they are wise men, so knowledgeable men, very smart, very studied, and they're specialists in particularly astronomy. And they're coming from the east, possibly the area of Babylon or Parthia, okay? Now, Eastern Magi. Now, we have to get very specific into who these wise men are. Eastern Magi, they're from the east, they are Magi, mixed a few beliefs together. A few beliefs and a few practices together. Now, this is called syncretism or pluralism. It's super common in our church today and in the world today. I'm going to take a little bit from this belief system, a little bit from that belief system, and I'm going to create what I think is right. The error in that is extensive, but what we see is we're creating a truth that isn't actually a truth. There is an absolute truth. There's an absolute worldview, and you have to align with it. And what we see, though, even in the church, is Christians professing Christ, but maybe practicing yoga in a way that is very Eastern and inviting that meditation and those spiritual things that are not at all a part of Christianity. The other thing could be crystals or fortune telling, occult practices, Ouija boards, tarot cards. What we're going to see is there's a little bit of a mix in here, even in what the Magi do. And as Christians, we are not to mix with other belief systems, especially because they're pagan. They come from the pit, essentially, something that's created of the earth and its cultures. So Eastern Magi mixed a few beliefs and practices together. They studied astrology and black magic to Zoroastrianism. So they have three things going on: black magic, Zoroastrianism, which I'm going to explain in a minute just briefly, and astrology. So astrology is the study of the constellations, the zodiac, in a way of finding your identity, in a way of knowing who you are, what's your personality, what's predictive of your future. It is absolutely outside the bounds of Christianity. It's outside the bounds of what God permits. It's looking to a created thing for identity instead of looking to the creator. He made the constellations, he made the stars. And so that is something they are mixing together with black magic. And then this Zoroastrianism is one of the oldest organized religions in the world. And it was founded in Iran on the teachings of the prophet Zoroaster. And you can look that up a little bit more, but when you see it, you're going to see a really big mix. Now, one thing to take away is that this type of wise man is what we see in Daniel 2. Verse 2, 4-5, and 10, and they are associated with the diviner priests, the mediums, and the sorcerers that you would have seen in Babylon. And so you can look those up if you want. The only other time this word magi, magos in Greek, appears in the New Testament is in Acts 13, 6-10. Now that's a wild story where there's a man there that's operating in sorcery, and he's called the son of the devil. Now, what we want to know, you can look those things up, but what we want to know here today is that son of the devil has the same beliefs that these wise men would have had in Jesus's time. It's the same timeline. We're talking about the same century. And so now what does all this mean? This is the big takeaway today. And it's really, really good. What we see here is the Magi get an invitation from God. They get a revelation. They see this star. They've been tracking different prophecies down, not in true belief, but in just because they watch these things. They're pulling from lots of religious things. They're curious. And so God beckons them essentially to come and worship his son. They're involved in other kinds of worship, but not only are they to come and worship his son, the newborn king, they are to bring him gifts. So this is a call of truth to the Gentiles and those of false religions. Come and know the truth. Come and understand what is really true. And so it is also a foreshadowing and a literal benchmark. This is so good that Jesus, even in his infancy, plunders the kingdom of the enemy. Plunders the kingdom of the enemy. He draws worshipers from the enemy camp, these magi, who aren't living in truth, but worshiping created things, combining religious things, following this Zoroastrianism. And he invites them to come and know truth and bow down to the newborn king and then give gifts. So I'm plundering, I'm taking your worshipers, and also you owe me. Everything you have actually belongs to me. And so he is plundering the kingdom of the enemy and forcing the enemy and his hordes to bow down. That's what we see when the Magi come and worship Jesus. See, if we don't understand our historical context, we don't know that what was happening right there is people that worship darkness and are steeped in darkness have seen a great light. And they've come and they've bend a knee. They have bowed down and offered gifts to who truly deserves it. It's pretty radical. So even in his infancy, Jesus is shaking things up and saying, even as a baby, the enemy has to bow to me and he owes me gifts. So take that to your Christmas dinner maybe this year and think about it. It's a pretty radical story once you understand all the context behind it. I'll see you next time.